So today's a little bit unique. We're in week 3 of a series we've called The Games We Play. And today is a special experience just for you online. I've known Chad and Melissa Goucher now for several years and had opportunity to watch as they've walked through some of the most challenging experiences that humankind can experience. So what I'm hoping that you'll find over the next little bit is just a little bit of a challenge to help you make peace when the game that you're playing is missing some pieces. Let's join Chad and Melissa.
So we're just going to talk today about something that really kind of gone on with us in the last kind of 4 years and some of the things that we've learned through it. So Melissa's going to share just a little bit about kind of the journey we've been on for the last 4 years.
Yeah, so actually 4 years ago this week, today, we were dealing with a little bit of Chad had gotten sick. We knew he had pneumonia, and so he had gone to the doctor a couple of times. It was not getting better. Like I said, 4 years ago today, he was admitted to the hospital. We had to go to the emergency room, and he was admitted to the hospital. And that was the beginning of an over 40-day stay in the hospital. Many of you know about what happened and were here. Some of you don't. And so we just wanted to give you a little idea of what was going on at the time. We were in the middle of building this building. The last thing he actually got to do here was lay Bibles in the footers of the building. And the next week he got put in the hospital. During that stay in the hospital, he went through a lot of different procedures and surgeries. So I spent a lot of time in a hospital room with him or in the ICU with him in a room with him hooked up to all kinds of machines, them breathing for him, him breathing some on his own, just depending on the time. And so our lives changed drastically 4 years ago. Not what we thought it was going to be. We were 2 months away from being empty nesters. So we thought, oh, this great new stage of life.
Getting them off the payroll.
Yeah,
Woo!
woo, woo.
Right? Yeah.
God had other plans for us. And while it has been a challenging, difficult, and extremely strenuous time for us in our lives, in our married life, and in our, just our life in general, it's been one of the biggest blessings of our lives too. And it's hard to explain that to someone who hasn't been through a trauma in their life like that or a difficult time. And I will tell you right now, you may not be going through a difficult time, but at some point you will. We all do. And so I just hope that some of the things that we talk about today, you can be reminded, if you're not going through that difficult time now or haven't gone through it recently, that even when you do go through a difficult time, you'll be able to take some of these things and put them into play to kind of help you through that.
Yeah, it's often been said we don't have seasons here in Phoenix, but we have seasons, okay? We have summer, right after summer, and just before summer, okay? We have 3 seasons here in Phoenix. Well, we all have seasons of life, too. You're either in a rough time, you're just coming out of a rough time, or you're getting ready to go into one. That's kind of the way it is. And so we just kind of want to talk through some things that we learned through that. And it's something we're still going through. The disease I have, it's still there. It's it is.
Yeah, his lungs actually work at 33%. We found that out just a couple of weeks ago. It's dropped a little bit. So we deal every day with just what that looks like, how we can help improve that. It's not something that has a cure. He'll eventually have to have a double lung transplant. That's in our future. We know that. We are just praying and doing everything we can to hold off on that as long as possible.
So one of the things that we've kind of gone back to is just this idea of leaning into each other during these times and what it's looked like and how we've done it. And so I want to remind you of what the Apostle Paul says in 1 Corinthians 13. Now, sometimes it gets cliche because at every wedding it's read or whatever, but it's this definition of what love is. And one of the things that Melissa and I have kind of taken this to heart and done is that we've kind of personalized that. and the way that we use that passage. And, Paul writes, love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it doesn't dishonor others, so on, so on. The passage goes on. Well, what we've kind of adopted in that model for us is not that we're changing Scripture or anything, but we've tried to personalize it to the fact that I look at this deal and it's like, Melissa is patient. Melissa is kind. Melissa does not boast. And I want to be able to fill in my life where it's like, Chad is patient. I'm not, okay? For those of you who know me, but man, I pray and I strive for that. But that's what I want to become. And so I want to become this. We want to become these manifestations of what love is. And so we've tried to personalize that and what we've done. So we've taken that. Love always hopes. Love perseveres. Love never fails. But the one thing that Paul doesn't write there that I think is critical, I'm not saying Scripture is missing anything at all, but love is a choice also. And it's a continual choice. I have to choose every day to love Melissa above everyone else. She has to choose me every day above everyone else. Now, it's not as difficult for her because I'm such a trophy husband, Yeah, right. Yeah. I'll hear about that later, okay? But we have to choose that time and time again. I'm going to love her more than anything else. And it's just like the way we choose Jesus. You don't just choose Jesus one time. It's this perpetual. Every morning I'm going to get up and I'm going to choose to follow God. I'm going to choose to follow His ways above whatever my emotions tell me, whatever my flesh tells me. I'm going to trust. I'm going to lean in. We start the day with that foundation. I'm going to choose to do this today. Well, we've just kind of applied that to love, and we just said we're going to choose to love each other no matter what. And sometimes it's difficult. And Melissa said to me so many times, I like you. I mean, I love you, but I'm not sure I like you very much right now. Some of you can relate to that, but I mean, it's just like, that's kind of where it's at. We're going to love each other through the thick and the thin. And the thing about it is we've got to understand that there are times in our life that I think are critical that we can choose our emotions ahead of time. Okay, we can do this. We can choose our emotions ahead of time. And here's what I mean by that. When we go into a situation that's going to be difficult, maybe it's a conversation with a loved one, maybe it's a conversation with a boss, a child, a spouse, a doctor's appointment where you don't know the outcome, whatever it is. When you can go into these things and you say, okay, no matter what happens here, this doesn't shake my faith in who God is. This doesn't change anything. Okay? It may change the way we go about something, or it may change our plans a little bit, but it does not change the sovereignty of who God is and what He has done. And so we're going to choose ahead of time. And we've said that so many times. Mm-hmm. And like when we go to the doctor's office, we'll say it in the car. Okay, we're going to be the best people they deal with today. We're going to be the best people that they deal with. And it's not in some fake way. We're just saying we're going to be positive about this. And we're going to be joyful in this. And those people deal with sick, cranky, mean, bitter people all day. That's not going to be us. Okay? And I take a lot of pills every day, but you know what? There's a whole lot of people that take a whole lot more pills than me. And so I'm thankful for that. And we're just going to do that. We're going to choose those emotions as we can ahead of time. Mm-hmm. Have to have a difficult conversation. Yeah. Okay, this could go bad, but no matter what, I'm going to do this. And this is a scriptural a premise here. This is not just something we say. Paul writes about this in 2 Corinthians. In 2 Corinthians 10:5, he says this: we demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God. If it's going to go against God, I'm going to fight it. And we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. I'm not going to let my emotions or my feelings or my self-pity or my doubt or whatever it is creep in the way of who God is. I'm going to make it obedient to who Christ is. And I want to focus on that. And that helps us with our emotions. Right. Time and time again. So we want to go through a few things that we've learned over the course of these last few years. And hopefully they can be helpful to you.
Right. So the first one that I would encourage you is remember what God has done for you. And I think a great example of this is in Daniel 3, where Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are facing King Nebuchadnezzar, who is asking them to bow down to him or be thrown in a furnace. And they refuse. And their state, the thing that they say is, it doesn't matter what happens to us. We know that God's brought us through in the past, and so we know that he's going to take care of us for the future. Whether that is that we die in that fire or, that we live and we don't get thrown in the fire, whatever the situation is, we know because of the past, what God has done for us, that he's going to do something. He's going to do something great for us in the future as well. I was reminded of this morning. I was going through some of my social media accounts, and this time of year, like I said, this was the week that Chad got put in the hospital for the first time. And so this time of year always stresses me out a little bit. I kind of get a little anxious because I start seeing some of the pictures from and updates that we had put, which were great at the time. But now every year during this time, I get those same updates on my look back at your memories, that kind of thing, or pictures of his feet in the hospital, his socks in the hospital, and all of this. And so while it was great at the time, it stresses me out a little bit to go back there to remember what happened. But as I was looking at those this morning, I had this voice in my head, and it was God, and he said, it's because I brought you through that. Remember what I did for you. Remember what I did. I'm still going to be here, and I'm still going to do everything for you in the future. It's going to be for my good. Yeah.
That's a tough thing to do in the midst of things. And it goes back to the idea of us choosing our emotions every day before time as much as we possibly can, but just being in that moment of awareness of who God is, and he has never let us down. And our path hasn't always been what we thought it would be. It wasn't like I said, the retirement life that we had hoped for is not there. What we had thought and we had planned is not there because I physically can't do some of those things anymore. But over this course of these years, God's put something else inside of us that's stirred in us that we are already finding more fulfillment and joy in than we would have ever thought and we wouldn't have found on our own. Yeah. But it's just that trusting in that fact. And so I just want to encourage you this, that you may not feel it at the moment, but God has brought you through to where you are today. He's brought you through. And you may think, I'm scarred and I'm wounded. Yep, you may be, but he's brought you through, and he will not let you down. He won't change. He won't sway from that. So we want to encourage that. Remember what God's done. Also, I want to encourage you just to submit to God's story. And there's something very powerful about letting go of everything that we had desired, that we had, and not that those things were bad. We'd made plans. We're going to do this, and we want to do these things, and but those plans were taken, and maybe not taken, but changed. And there's something freeing about coming to the realization that our lives are not our own. And it's God telling his story through us. And so how is God going to tell that story the best? How is his name going to be lifted higher than we could have ever done it on our own? And so that's what we were like, okay, God, we got that wrong. We want to step aside, and we want you to just tell your story through us. And what we've discovered is that it's put us in places that we've never dreamed that we would be. It's put us with people that we could have never imagined that we would be sitting at the dinner table with or in our home with us. And they're just amazing things that have come through it. So just submit to God's story, even though it's not the one you thought. Right. And I think we both kind of had to get over the fact of this is not the way it's supposed to be.
We had to kind of mourn the loss of the life that we thought we were going to have. And I know in a lot of situations you do that, whether it be if you've gone through a divorce or just any situation. It may not look the way that you thought it was going to, but God has a story.
right? We none of us, when we're growing up, we're like, oh, man, I want to do this. I don't want to get really sick and not be able to breathe. None of us do that. None of us say, I really want to grow up and have this beautiful wedding, and then 3 years later I want to be divorced because my spouse was having an affair. We don't. That's not what we plan. That's not what we dream. But God uses those stories. And even though it's not the story you hoped for, your story is so powerful, and it is so meaningful, and it is so beneficial if you'll let God use it. And you think, I don't have anything great about my story. My story's this, and da-da-da-da. Your story is powerful, and your story is meaningful. So just encourage you to submit to God's story.
Right. The next thing I would encourage is stop asking why and start asking how. In the middle of the stay in the hospital, I had so many days and nights where I would just literally say, God, why? Why is this happening? I didn't ever ask God, why was he doing this to us? Because I didn't feel like that was the situation. But I asked, why is this happening though? Why are you allowing this to happen? Why, we're on your side. And so, but we had, through that time, and then a lot of counseling after, and still, I can't say that I don't ask why still sometimes, but I think the better thing is to ask how. How am I going to tell his story through this? How is he going to be glorified in all that I say and do? How am I going to show God's love to other people so that I can lead more people to Jesus? Because I want them to go where I'm going, And so.
And there's something amazingly freeing. When we go through all these things with a why attitude, we become bitter.
Right.
We become resentful. We get angry at God. I had a guy in the hospital, one of the nurses, who every morning, 3:30, he would come in and take my blood, because that's when you do it, apparently. And we'd spend about 30 minutes together. And he's like, you're a pastor, right? Yeah. And he goes, well, aren't you mad at God? I'm like, how can I be mad at God? It's like, but yeah, you're on his side and everything, right? Yeah, but here's the deal. God doesn't owe me anything. And when we go into this why attitude, we approach it this, God owes us something. Well, here's the fact of the matter. I got serious health issues, but they are not nearly as serious as my sin issue. And Jesus handled that 2,000 years ago. So bring on the rest. That's where and so that's where we're at. Some of you have financial problems or relational problems, health problems, whatever it is, career problems. Those are all secondary to a sin problem that we all have. And when we ask why all the time, we get bitter. When we start to ask how, we start to see how God works. And that's been just so energizing to Melissa and I. Okay, how can we use this? What are you teaching us? And what do we need to do next? So stop asking why, start asking how. Next, I'd encourage you this. Be aware of the things that can set you off. When you're in the midst of a difficult situation, when relationships not on cruise control, and you've got to have hard conversations, whether it be relationally, maybe it's in career, whatever. Be aware of those things and prepare ahead of time. You've got things right now on your calendar that you dread. You're not looking forward to. You're like, oh, that's not going to go well. All right. How are you already preparing for that? How are you preparing your heart? How are you preparing your mind, your soul for those things? It goes back to that idea of choosing our emotions ahead of time. So just live in the moment of what's coming. How do I prepare with it? How do I deal with it? Now, there are some things that totally catch us off guard. Okay? There are deaths that happen. There are accidents that happen. There are situations that we totally were not prepared for. And that's okay. But as much as we can, be prepared for those things. And be aware, okay, this is a problem area. And maybe you ask somebody to help you ahead of time. Hey, would you just be praying for me during this time? Hey, would you ride with me in the car as I go to do this or whatever? Or call them on the way out. Hey, I need you to talk me off the ledge, or you need to buy me ice cream right now because I'm, bad. So, we just prepare for those things as much as you possibly can.
Yeah, and then the next thing I would say is always consider your spouse. And what I mean by that is, you're here in a time and a place with your spouse, but there are different reasons that brought you here. There are different seasons that brought you here. You're in that same space with them, but you were brought together from two different directions, two different trajectories. One of the things I think about with this is during this situation, Chad went through a very physical trauma when he got sick in the hospital and all the surgeries. And he coded one night and they had to bring him back. And he went through a very physical trauma. In that same situation, I went through a very emotional trauma. And I didn't realize that until just recently. We were sitting with another couple who had gone through a very big health scare and are still dealing with it. And she said this, and I literally started bawling because I was like, I didn't think about the fact that we actually went through this together, but completely different. And so when you go through things in your marriage and in life in general, realize that you may be in the same place, but you got there in two different ways, no matter what that is. And so we have had to work through a lot of that because I had expectations on him of what I was going through with that trauma. He had expectations on me for what he was going through, and they were completely different. And we had to realize that we had to come together and realize that we had to work through that together.
Yeah, we can't imagine or put ourselves in the place of our spouse. I don't remember the coding night. I remember going into that room and that's it. I don't remember anything for several days after that. Melissa lived in that moment of seeing people jump on me and do all the thing. And I can't even imagine what that was like or anything. And so we always have to be aware of those things. So no matter what your situation, maybe you're remarried and there's been a divorce or something like that, but you're in the same place, in the same space at the same time, but you got there different ways. And we just need to be mindful of that. And we need to be aware of that. And it's really good to talk through those things. Mm-hmm. And Melissa and I have our best conversations in the car. We do. We get in the Jeep, we put the top down, we drive around 303. And so if you see us or whatever, and we're like, oh, you can Venmo us money for ice cream or whatever, because we're going to be fine, okay? But that's the way we work through these things. And we talk through those things and in those moments, and that's when we come to those realizations of how we communicate best. And I want to know those things. I want to be empathetic about those, and I want to be aware of the things that got her here too, because.
And on a side note with that, figure out how you communicate best. Whether that is like we determined that we are best when we're side by side. I don't know if you know this, but most of the time women, they communicate face to face, and that's how they feel most comfortable, and they communicate best. Men are side by side in a golf cart at a basketball game, or whatever it is, they're side by side. We have found that in our relationship, though, we communicate best side by side. So I would encourage you in your marriage, find out the best way that you guys communicate with each other, whatever that is, and make that a priority in your marriage.
100% agree. And finally, this is what we're going to leave you with. Hopefully this hasn't been a downer. It's been an encouragement. But we want to leave you with a very, very positive thing, and that's this. Always put joy on the calendar. If you guys have heard that from me, if you've been here around any time, that is huge in our life. And it's not something that we just say. It's something we do. It's not something that we figuratively do. It's something that we literally do. We literally put things on our calendar that we are looking forward to that will bring us joy. And like I said earlier, you've got some things on your calendar right now that you're not looking forward to at all. You need some things on your calendar that you are definitely looking forward to. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have to be, a vacation or something extravagant or anything like that. It can just be like hey, you know what? We're going to go for a drive, or we're going to go get some ice cream, or we're going to go out on the back patio and turn off everything, and we're going to dance around the back patio, or maybe it is a vacation, or whatever it is, but find your joy and put it on the calendar, because those times are coming. Those seasons of tough stretches are coming, and when you can look on your calendar and you see those bright things ahead, like, okay, God, you do got this. There is that light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not a train coming at me, It's good, okay? And so put joy in your calendar. So I want to encourage you, when you came in, you were handed this little card here with 3 little things on it. Maybe put this on your fridge. Put this on your mirror, that you get dressed in front of the morning, and just be mindful of these things and just kind of live in those moments. But I would really, really encourage you to always have at least 3 things on your calendar that you're looking forward to that are going to bring you joy. And no matter how big, no matter how small, but put joy on your calendar and be people of joy. God created us for that. 3 kinds of festivals in the Old Testament. Those that celebrated the past, those that celebrated what was going on right now, and there were even 2 festivals that celebrated what God was going to do. How cool is that? We have a God who celebrates the future. So that means put joy on your calendar, okay? You can do that, and it's okay. So, anything else? Yeah. You're cool. Thanks for being here. I like you. Yeah.
I like you too.
Yeah. It is these relationships are hard. They're difficult. But when we work hard at them, man, they can become beautiful, beautiful things. And I just encourage you to do that. So let me pray with us before our time here is done. God, we just thank you for the way that you show up, the way that you work, the way that you guide us. May we always learn better ways to lift your name high. May it never be about us, but may it be your story that is continually being told through us. And so, God, right now, I know in this room and those that are watching online, there are some hurts. There's some deep, deep things going on in relationships. And I just pray that you would sustain them through this, like you always have. I also pray that they would turn to you in these times, that they would not run from you, but they would run to you, because you will not let us down. You will not let us down. And you lead us to a place of joy and a place of peace that your word tells us passes all understanding, that we can be joyful and content in the midst of very, very difficult situations and circumstances. God, thank you for designing the family. Thank you for giving us a biblical model of what it looks like. May we live it out. May the husband fulfill his responsibilities. May the wife fulfill her responsibilities. And through that, we get this beautiful, shining example of what love can be and who you really, really are. So God, we love you and we praise you and give you honor. In Jesus' name, amen.